What would you do if you witnessed someone powerful, wealthy, and famous publicly degrading a hardworking employee who couldn't defend themselves without losing their job? Would you stay silent and look away like most people do? Or would you risk everything to stand up for someone who society has deemed less important? In the hospitality industry, staff members endure verbal abuse at a rate that would shock most people. Studies show that over 70% of hotel workers have experienced some form of harassment or humiliation from guests during their careers, and the vast majority of these incidents go unreported because employees fear losing their livelihoods. But every once in a while, someone in a position of power decides that enough is enough. Today, I'm going to tell you the incredible true story of what happened when a celebrity guest at a luxury boutique hotel in Colorado made the fatal mistake of humiliating the wrong employee in front of the wrong audience. What he didn't realize was that the quiet woman he was screaming at wasn't just another worker he could bully into submission. And the man watching silently from across the lobby wasn't just another guest. This is the story of Marcus Chun, the hotel owner nobody recognized, and the moment he taught a famous television personality a lesson that the internet would never forget. The Aspen Ridge Hotel isn't your typical mountain resort. Tucked away in the Colorado Rockies about an hour outside of Denver, it's a 32-room boutique property that caters to guests seeking privacy, exclusivity, and world-class service. The hotel has hosted royalty, Fortune 500 executives, and some of the biggest names in entertainment over its 40-year history. But what makes Aspen Ridge truly special isn't the thread count of its sheets or the vintage champagne in its cellars. It's the philosophy of its owner, Marcus Chun, a 63-year-old Chinese-American entrepreneur who built his hospitality empire from literally nothing. Marcus immigrated to the United States in 1979 with his parents when he was just 9 years old. His father worked as a hotel dishwasher in San Francisco, and young Marcus would often visit him at work, watching how the hotel operated, studying the guests, and most importantly, observing how staff members were treated by both management and customers. Those childhood observations would shape everything Marcus later built. By the age of 35, Marcus had worked his way up from busboy to manager at several prestigious hotels, saved every penny he could, and finally purchased his first small property in Lake Tahoe. That property grew into a collection of 12 boutique hotels across the western United States. Each one operated according to Marcus's core principle, which he calls the invisible hierarchy. In Marcus's hotels, there is no visible distinction between the importance of a housekeeper and a general manager. Everyone wears simple, elegant attire without obvious rank indicators. Everyone eats in the same employee dining room. And most importantly, everyone is trained to understand that the guest is not always right. Sometimes the guest is wrong. And when they are, Marcus's staff has permission to respond with dignity. This philosophy made Aspen Ridge one of the most sought-after properties in the hospitality world, both for guests who appreciated genuine service and for employees who wanted to work somewhere that valued their humanity. The hotel maintained a staff retention rate of over 90%, unheard of in an industry where turnover typically exceeds 70% annually. It was late November when the incident occurred. The hotel was fully booked for the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, hosting a mix of families, couples, and a few high-profile names who wanted to escape the chaos of Los Angeles or New York. Among the guests was Derek Holloway, a 51-year-old television personality best known for hosting a popular home renovation show that had run for 11 seasons. Derek had a massive social media following, endorsement deals with major brands, and a reputation in the industry for being what people diplomatically called difficult. Those who had worked with him were less diplomatic. Derek Holloway was known as a nightmare, a man who believed his fame entitled him to treat anyone he perceived as beneath him with open contempt. He had been banned from at least 2 other luxury properties that anyone knew of, though his publicist had worked hard to keep those incidents out of the press. Derek arrived at Aspen Ridge on Wednesday evening with his wife and 2 teenage children. From a moment he stepped out of his rented Escalade, he was already in a mood. The flight from Los Angeles had been delayed. His preferred suite at a competing hotel had been given away due to a booking error. Aspen Ridge was his backup option, and he made sure everyone on the staff knew he considered this a compromise. The front desk associate who checked him in, a young man named Tyler, later told colleagues that Derek had complained about everything from the temperature of the welcome champagne to the distance from the parking area to the main entrance. But Tyler handled it professionally, upgraded Derek to the largest suite available, and arranged for complimentary spa treatments for the entire family. By the time Derek took the elevator to his room, Tyler believed the situation had been smoothed over. He was wrong. The following morning, Thanksgiving Day, the hotel's restaurant was serving an elaborate brunch buffet for guests who wanted to enjoy the holiday without the stress of cooking. The dining room was full of families in cozy sweaters, children excited about the snow outside, and the warm hum of holiday conversation. Working the floor that morning was Gloria Espinoza, a 58-year-old server who had been with Aspen Ridge for over 20 years. Gloria was widely regarded as one of the best employees the hotel had ever had. Guests regularly requested her by name when making reservations. She had trained dozens of younger staff members, and she approached her work with a grace and warmth that embodied everything Marcus Chun believed hospitality should be. Gloria was also dealing with an enormous personal challenge that almost nobody at the hotel knew about. Her husband of 35 years was in the final stages of pancreatic cancer. She had been taking unpaid leave when she could, but the medical bills were astronomical, and she needed every shift she could get. That Thanksgiving morning, Gloria had left her husband in the care of their adult daughter specifically so she could work the holiday and earn time and a half pay. Derek Holloway came down to breakfast around 10:30 with his family. He was already irritated because the hotel's Wi-Fi had been slow in his suite, and he had missed some fantasy football transactions he wanted to make before the afternoon games. When Gloria approached his table to take drink orders, Derek barely looked at her. He ordered a mimosa, then immediately interrupted his wife to complain loudly about the service at the hotel. Gloria returned with the drinks within 3 minutes, but Derek had already moved on to a new grievance. The eggs at the buffet were cold, he announced to the entire dining room. "This is what I get for staying at a second-rate property." Gloria apologized and offered to have fresh eggs prepared in the kitchen specifically for his table. Derek waved her away dismissively and told her to just do her job. The tension escalated about 20 minutes later. Gloria was carrying a tray of plates back to the kitchen when she passed Derek's table, just as he pushed his chair back without looking. The collision was minor, but a glass of orange juice on Gloria's tray tipped and a few drops splashed onto the white tablecloth near Derek's plate. It did not touch his clothing. It did not touch his food. But Derek Holloway reacted as if Gloria had committed a violent assault. He leaped from his chair, his face red with fury, and began screaming at her in a voice loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. He called her careless, incompetent, and then used a word that made several nearby guests gasp audibly. He demanded to know her name and said he was going to have her fired before the day was over. He said she was exactly the kind of person who gave the service industry a bad name. Gloria stood frozen, the tray still in her hands, tears forming in her eyes despite her best efforts to maintain her composure. Other guests stared in shock. Some looked down at their plates, unable to witness the humiliation happening in front of them. Derek's own wife and children seemed mortified, but they said nothing. The entire dining room had fallen silent except for Derek's continued tirade about how he should have stayed at a real hotel instead of this glorified bed and breakfast. What Derek Holloway did not know, and what would soon become the most consequential fact of his entire weekend, was that Marcus Chun was seated at a corner table just 15 feet away. Marcus made it a practice to visit each of his properties at least once a month, and he always did so without fanfare. He never announced his arrivals, never took a suite, and never made himself known to guests. He liked to observe how his hotels operated when nobody knew the owner was watching. On this particular morning, Marcus had been enjoying a quiet breakfast with his own daughter, who was visiting from Seattle, when Derek began his assault on Gloria. For 2 full minutes, Marcus sat silently, watching everything unfold. He watched Gloria's face. He watched the reactions of other guests. He watched Derek's family sit in ashamed silence. And he felt something building inside him that he had not felt in many years. Marcus Chin rose from his chair slowly. He was not a physically imposing man. He stood about 5'8", with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, wearing a simple blue sweater that gave no indication of his wealth or position. As he walked toward Derek's table, several guests assumed he was just another concerned customer about to suggest everyone calm down. Derek noticed him approaching and sneered. "Are you the manager? Good. I want this woman terminated immediately. I have never experienced such unprofessional behavior in my life." Marcus stopped directly in front of Derek and spoke in a calm, measured voice that somehow cut through the tension more effectively than any shouting could have. He said he was not the manager. He said he was Marcus Chun, and he owned this hotel. He also owned 11 others. He said he had been in the hospitality industry for over 40 years, and in all that time, he had never witnessed a guest behave with such cruelty toward a staff member. The color drained from Derek's face. He clearly had not expected this, but he recovered quickly, perhaps assuming that even an owner would ultimately capitulate to a famous guest. He began explaining that Gloria had been careless, that she had nearly ruined his clothing, that her service all morning had been subpar. Marcus let him finish, then turned to address the entire dining room. He apologized to all the guests for the disturbance they had just witnessed. He said he understood that the holidays could be stressful, but he wanted everyone to understand something important about Aspen Ridge. He explained that the woman standing here, Gloria Espinoza, had served guests at this hotel for over 20 years. She had never received a single complaint. He said that what everyone had just witnessed was not a service failure, but an example of how some people believe their fame or wealth entitles them to treat other human beings as subhuman. Then he turned back to Derek and said something that guests would later describe as the most satisfying moment they had ever witnessed. Marcus told Derek that he was terminated as a guest of Aspen Ridge Hotel, effective immediately. He said Derek had 60 minutes to pack his belongings and vacate the property. He said the hotel would refund every dollar Derek had paid, not because Derek deserved it, but because Marcus did not want a single penny that came from someone capable of such ugliness. He said Derek was also permanently banned from every property Marcus owned. When Derek began sputtering about lawsuits and social media exposure and ruining Marcus's reputation, Marcus simply smiled. He said Derek was welcome to post whatever he liked. He said Marcus would also be making a statement, and he suspected the court of public opinion would render its own verdict. He told Derek that his actions here today would follow him, and that there was no amount of money, fame, or lawyers that could undo what he had just revealed about his own character. The dining room erupted into spontaneous applause. Other guests stood up. Gloria, who had been standing in stunned silence throughout the entire exchange, finally allowed herself to breathe. Several guests approached her afterward to offer words of support and encouragement. Derek and his family left the hotel within the hour, his wife reportedly in tears and his children refusing to speak to him. And then something remarkable happened. One of the guests in the dining room that morning was a young woman named Jessica Torres, who worked as a producer for a regional news station in Denver. She had captured portions of the confrontation on her phone, and that evening, with Marcus's permission, she posted the video to Twitter. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed over 20 million times. Major news outlets picked up the story. The hashtag #ProtectHospitalityWorkers began trending, and Derek Holloway's carefully cultivated public image began to crumble. Two of his major sponsors quietly dropped him within a week. His network announced that his show would not be renewed for a 12th season, citing creative differences. And thousands of former service industry workers shared their own stories of abuse by wealthy and famous customers, creating a cultural moment that extended far beyond one hotel in Colorado. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this story is what happened to Gloria Espinoza. When Marcus learned about her husband's illness and the financial strain she had been under, he did something that she would never forget. He personally covered every remaining medical bill, anonymously at first, though Gloria eventually discovered the truth. When her husband passed away 3 months later, Marcus attended the funeral and delivered eulogy about the dignity of all work and the extraordinary people who dedicate their lives to serving others. He established a scholarship in Gloria's husband's name for hospitality students who demonstrated excellence in character, and he promoted Gloria to a newly created position called Guest Experience Ambassador, where her only job was to mentor younger staff members and help maintain the culture that made Aspen Ridge special. The last time anyone asked Gloria about that Thanksgiving morning, she said she had spent 20 years believing that her job was to absorb whatever guests threw at her with a smile. That day, she learned something different. She learned that her dignity was not negotiable, and that there were people in positions of power who understood that protecting workers was not just good ethics, but good business. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. How do you treat people who are serving you? The cashier at the grocery store, the waiter at the restaurant, the housekeeper at the hotel, the person on the other end of the customer service line. Do you see them as full human beings with their own struggles, dreams, and stories? Or do you see them as obstacles, inconveniences, extensions of products you're consuming? The way we treat people who cannot fight back says everything about who we really are. Fame and wealth reveal character. They do not create it. Derek Holloway was always the person who would scream at a grieving woman over a few drops of orange juice. His fame just gave him the platform to do it publicly. And Marcus Chun was always the person who would stand up for human dignity regardless of the cost. His success just gave him the power to do it effectively. The choice of who you want to be is made in small moments, every single day, in how you speak to people, how you acknowledge them, how you treat them when no one important is watching. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know who works in a service industry job and deserves more respect than they receive, I want you to do 3 things. First, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Second, leave a comment telling me about a time when someone stood up for you or when you stood up for someone else. Let's celebrate those moments together. And third, hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things and the moments that remind us what humanity looks like at its best. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. A little kindness costs you nothing, but it might mean everything to someone who needs it.